Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. I think we are into week number 85 this week, so you've already experienced from prior weeks a multitude of different kinds of miracles, both in my life and the lives of people who have shared their stories. So I think I can share most of the things today without a lot of explanation based on the past, and you can get a lot of clarification for anything I ever explain on the radio shows. Get a lot of clarification if you go to our website, which is spelled WCAT, that's W for worldwide, and CAT, radio.com/miracles/ one more time, Google wcatradio.com/miracles/ you get a lot of clarification for any questions you might have on our radio shows. I'm sure of that because several years of explanation are on our web pages, listed by category, easy to find. Okay, so let me just get into a miscellaneous sharing of various things. We can start out with, getting up in the morning. I was inspired one morning. I woke up in bed before the alarm went off. I said my daily prayers before I got up, which I usually do before I put my feet on the floor. And then I was inspired, okay, it was time to get up and get started, so I turned to get myself out of bed, and as soon as my feet touched the floor, the alarm went off. Now, enough about after the last 84 weeks, I deal in coincidence miracles, and I said I was inspired to get up. That means God was telling me it's time to get up, and the alarm goes off as my feet touch the floor. And for me, after 54 years of this happening, let's say maybe 200 times in 54 years, I know that's God showing me that he was in fact inspiring me. The next thing I'd like to share is I was inspired to go to a different park on a certain day. I was inspired to go to a different park and hand out cards and talk about my book to people who are interested. I find it helpful when I go to a park, if I find people who are just lounging around, they welcome some discussion about God and miracles, and I've been very blessed to be approaching. I only approach the people I'm inspired to approach, by the way. If I'm walking along on the park, I'll get an inspiration not to give someone a card and not to approach them. And when I break that inspiration, I'm usually very sorry I did, because the people totally reject what I'm talking about. So God leads me when I go to a park and I'm talking to people. He leads me to who to approach and who not to approach. So I was being led to go to a new park this day, and I prayed about it for wisdom, and I was inspired that, yes, go try this new park. And when I'm inspired to go somewhere, I usually find someone there who tells me they get a sign that from something I said matches what they were going through on that day. So I often get people telling me they believe that it was God's will that we met, and that's a very moving experience for me. It's happened, I have to tell you, hundreds of times in my life. Someone will say, gee, it's amazing that you said that or you did that because I was needing to hear that particular thing on this day. And it's no surprise to us if we're doing what God tells us to do. Those things should happen all the time. As it says in the Bible, in Mark chapter 16, verse 20, if you read Mark 16:20, you'll see when you're talking for God with what he inspires you to say, you'll often hear people react that way. So I drove this hour. It was an hour trip, and I drove the hour confident that God wanted me to go there, but my confidence started to melt away the longer the ride took, and I started to have some doubts. Now, that's not uncommon when you're doing God's work. As you all know, I'm sure, the devil is also active, and he tries to take away our courage and our faith and our belief and our trust in God. And the main thing that the devil wants us to do is absolutely don't talk to God and don't ask God what to do. That's absolutely his ball game. So when you are trying to do God's will, don't be surprised. You're going to get a lot of thoughts about you can't do the thing you're being inspired to do. Well, the proof I went to the right beach was when I got to the entrance and I was pulling in the driveway, I was greeted by one car in front of me had a license plate number 444, and the car on the right-hand side of me had a license plate number 777. And both of those, as you know, and my book explains, are very holy numbers. And to have both of them be there after driving for an hour as I'm going in the driveway is perfectly timed. And again, after 54 years, this has happened to me hundreds, I almost dare say thousands of times, that numbers will arrive as a confirmation. And if you're trying to do God's will, you'll be experiencing that as well in your life. The next miracle happened at the park. I was inspired as I was walking along. I came across something like 6 college freshmen, and I was inspired to hand out the card and talk about my book, and they were really very interested. I find college students are very interested when they hear an organized approach to talking about God, and not preaching religion and not talking about rules and regulations, but just talking about the nature of God, the friendship of God, and the fact that God is our friend. I mean, college people haven't heard these things explained that way, and that's why they love my book, because it talks about being God's friend. So we had a lot of discussions. We were talking, I was answering their questions. I guess we talked for about 20 minutes. And we saw a lot of similarity in thoughts, like they would ask me a question, and then as I answered it, one or two of the other people would say, gee, I was just going to ask the same question, or I was going to say that that's the right answer. So they were getting inspired with the things I was getting inspired with, and we could see the commonality, and that's another way of recognizing God in other people and in our discussions. In other words, they started to recognize God in their own minds, inspiring them because my answers were matching what they had been inspired to think the answer was. And because some of this was new for them, they knew the inspirations they were getting were not something they already knew. They saw the inspirations as popping into their mind as ideas coming from God, because idea means I plus Deo is the Latin word for God. So what was amazing is while we were talking, they were starting to notice God alive in their own minds, inspiring them to come up with the same answers where they didn't get a chance to answer because I was asked a question, but they were being inspired with the probable answers. So we had a wonderful time, and then I moved on from there and spoke to a few other people, and I guess I went on for probably a couple of hours. And then on the way back, on the way out, I usually take here one section of the park, like the northern section, and then on the way back I'll come back on the south section. So on the way back I'm covering the same area but different people. But on the way back, when I got back to this group of 6, now there were 12 people there, and they had been talking about all these experiences they were having, so that all 12 of them now were all excited. The 6 I met earlier and the new 6 people who were hearing these amazing things that they were being told. So they waved me over, and I wound up spending another like 40 minutes with them, 12 people asking questions, and the experience was the same again. Now all of them were getting these inspirations. Even when I would ask someone their name, I had in my mind already what I thought the answer would be. I was being inspired to know their name. So I gambled a couple of times where I was inspired, and I said, I was giving an example. I'd say it's like George says to Mary. And when I pointed at people as examples, they said, "How did you know my name was George? And how did you know my name was Mary?" And I explained I was just inspired to do that. And I was explaining to them that that's how God works. If you follow his inspirations, you'll get that kind of miracle happening all the time. Not with everything you say, of course, but you have it happen twice in a 25-minute discussion, and you're positive that God is doing that. So they got a lot out of that. And especially now the 12 of them, I know as I left, I was so delighted because I realized they're going to spend the next year together probably. They'll be sophomores. If it sounds like they're going to be in the same college. And they're going to be able to have this experience go on and on. What happened today was the spark was lit. The Holy Spirit of God lit a spark within each of them, and they saw how it works, and they saw the inspirations, and they saw God was talking into their minds and prompting them to say things that were being matched by each other. And so now they can do that for the rest of their life, as certainly as being friends together. My next encounter was with a mother and 2 daughters, teenage daughters, and I passed out the card and I started talking to them. They started asking questions. They were very interested in the book about miracle stories, certainly. And they asked if, what age level, and I told them from the age of 12 onward, from 12 years old to 100 years old, our book satisfies, and it can be understood by certainly 12-year-olds. So we had a delightful chat. I answered a lot of their spiritual questions. And as I was leaving, the mother said, "I'm certainly going to tell my husband about it. He's due to meet us here shortly. And thank you for, giving us all the input and answers. I'm certain my husband's going to want to get the book." And then I went on and I passed out cards to some more people. I guess about an hour later, the husband came to find me. He walked all the way down through the park and found me. And I was talking to someone else, but he couldn't resist coming and interrupting us and shaking my hand and thanking me profusely that I had spent time with his daughters, saying the things I did. He was so excited and delighted. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. And I don't even know what kinds of things delighted him so much, but I know he was ecstatic and he was going to buy the book. So I share that with you because when you're doing things for God, you have these wonderful experiences where you do good and you don't even realize you're doing it because you're just doing whatever God inspires you to do. Well, I hope I've said something today that has convinced the listeners that you can ask God what to do and trust He's going to answer you and He's going to inspire you. And when you have doubts, you ask God to please inspire you with some way that you'll know you're really hearing Him. For example, He might say, your brother will call you by noon or your sister will call you by 2 p.m. this afternoon. And if that happens, you'll have your confirmation. So ask God to show you some clues that He's really talking to you and you'll be convinced. God bless you all. I'll talk to you all next week.